This is ClueCon Weekly, the official FreeSWITCH web show produced and broadcasted directly from FreeSWITCH. ClueCon Weekly features live updates from the FreeSWITCH developers and presentations from various pioneers of communications technology. ClueCon Weekly is brought to you by FreeSWITCH Solutions, the official consulting firm of the FreeSWITCH open source project. Get help from the experts. Visit freeswitch.com. ClueCon, the premier technology conference for telecom, WebRTC, IoT, and all things maker. ClueCon is held every year in Chicago, Illinois, and offers an all-day hackathon and 4 days of technology-rich presentations from developers around the world. Learn more at ClueCon.com or call 877-748-CLUE.
All right, guys, welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Today is November 30th, and today we'll have Mr. Brian West from the FreeSWITCH core development team joining us, and he's going to be showing off mod XML curl and some examples on how you can use that in your FreeSWITCH deployments. If you guys are, watching us on Facebook or YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like the FreeSWITCH page, and you guys can get the updates on these future videos. Coming up next, we've got Miss Kathleen King. How are you doing today, Kathleen?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Ken. This week, we released 1.6.13, so head over to freeswitch.org to see all the great new additions. And while you're there, if you've ever wondered what FreeSWITCH is all about, we have this great new video up, freeswitch.org. You can go watch that and get a good idea of what we're all about. For those of you that don't know, the FreeSWITCH team hosts a bug hunt on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Central Time. We host this gathering right here in the public conference bridge and use this time to address bugs in FreeSWITCH. This is a great time for our community members to join us and ask their questions or help out by testing code. So join us by dialing 888 at conference.freeswitch.org/VC, or if you're located in the U.S., you can call 919-386-9900, and that'll get you right in here. And then would you or someone you know like to be a guest here on ClueCon Weekly? If there was someone you'd like to see or something you would like to see demonstrated, please reach out to us at marketing@cluecon.com. We can make that happen. Next week, we have Matthew from Matrix joining us to announce their edition of end-to-end encryption. So be sure to join us for that. It's going to be very exciting. And then stay connected by joining HipChat channels, hipchat.freeswitch.org, IRC #FreeSWITCH, and that way you can see all the latest and greatest announcements. And like us on Facebook, FreeSWITCH and ClueCon, and follow us on Twitter. And that's it from me, Ken.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Kathleen. And for now, we're going to go over to Mr. Brian West. For you guys that don't know Brian, Brian's been one of the original contributors to FreeSWITCH. He worked with Anthony and from the very beginning. In fact, he worked with Anthony even before FreeSWITCH was invented. He's been around VoIP for a very long time. And Brian is a person that actually helped get me involved into this whole VoIP open source thing. So, thanks, Brian, for the original help there. So he's very knowledgeable in not just FreeSWITCH, but also in VoIP in general. And so I think you've got some pretty cool stuff you want to show for us today, Brian?
Yes, I do. I've put together some examples of how to use XML curl. I've noticed in the community that some of the community members are building these elaborate extensions and static configurations within FreeSWITCH to do all kinds of weird conditioning. The FreeSWITCH XML dial plan was not originally intended for you to do complex things like that. Once you get to a certain point, you want to transition from that to a scripting language and or XML curl. One of the advantages to XML curl is you can have a centralized place where all your configurations get served from. This helps you deploy things a lot easier. You don't have to hack together any shell scripts to do anything. You just have a simple config on your FreeSWITCH instance pointed at your web cluster, because all of the requests go over HTTP. And you can cluster that, make it HA available. You can reuse a lot of the web technologies that you already know. In addition, this particular technology is something that anybody with any web experience, coding in Python, Perl, Ruby, or any other web language that's able to build XML documents. Most of them have like XML Writer available. The example I'm going to show you today is something I just threw together yesterday that's written in Perl based on some previous stuff that I've done that's actually in Tree. So you guys can guide. I'm going to show you this right now. So guys, let's see here. First off, you will want to configure your XML curl. For example, I have just a single binding in here that binds my configuration, directory, and dial plan to this CGI script on this web server. So this particular script can serve up dial plan, directory, and configuration. You can create different bindings if you want to send configuration one place or directory another. You can mix and match. This is fairly flexible. It supports HTTPS, authentication. There's tons of options for configuring this. You can pretty much shoehorn this into anything. This allows you to set FreeSWITCH on top of an existing infrastructure where your data is already stored in various places, and this allows you to centralize where you collect data and conditions for your interactions with FreeSWITCH. So let me show you how this works. For example, let me get FreeSWITCH started here. So get FreeSWITCH up and running here. We got to do this a little bit here. So make sure my configuration is set. One of the things you'll want to do is make sure you uncomment this and save that. It wasn't there when I started up. I'm just going to load mod XML curl. And as you see, it has XML fetch function, points to CGI, dial plan directory configuration. This allows for me to do some interesting things. This is an example that I put together yesterday. You can ignore a lot of this at the top because that's theoretical. This gives you the ultimate flexibility to do anything and everything you want with a call. On demand, it's four-dimensional because you can answer the same request different ways depending on the conditions that you see in the request coming from FreeSWITCH. For example, you could answer completely different for somebody checking their voicemail on a directory lookup. So you can mix and match how you want to do it. It gives you the ultimate flexibility to change how FreeSWITCH behaves. So you can also tie in and check your SIP authentication because when a register request comes in, you get all of the data for calculating the hash. So you could actually hide the fact that a 403 or a 401 because you don't want to give back for security purposes. A lot of people do not want to give back a 401 or a 403 together, because that gives the impression if you give a 401, that's a valid user. 403 is like, you never know. It probably isn't a valid user. So, it helps lower your attack surface a little. I can show an example of that sometime as well if you guys want to see that. You can also choose to mix and match if you want to use XML curl with dynamic configurations or if you want to select which ones are static. So for static, for example, let me get down to that. Let me explain this a little bit. So I'm using Perl in this, in the XML Writer Perl extension. And I've got a couple of things in here where, this is just standard CGI stuff. I print my header, print the XML, this is starting my XML. So, for example, let me go down here where I generate. This is an example of if I get a request for, say, Sophia.conf, and I don't want to configure that dynamically using XML Perl. All I have to do is generate a response from my web application that looks like this. Say FreeSWITCH document, FreeSWITCH XML, section name result status not found. Now what that will do is instruct FreeSWITCH to fall back to the static configurations that are on disk. And this is an example of how I've done this in XML Writer here. This is not how you would normally do something raw with XML Writer. You would create convenience functions, wrappers. For example, like I've shown here in this example of this is a theoretical thing. I didn't have time to complete this, but this is kind of an example. You would create a FreeSWITCH XML Perl module that would wrap XML Writer, and to do a simple dial plan that you needed to build, you could just create the object, call a method to create a dial plan, add application, and render the XML. Again, that's theoretical. That's very easy to do. I've done this before. Um, so that's just one of many ways you can do this. And then I've put some debugging information in here as well. So this script right here will be put in the comments below. So anybody that kind of wants to go look at it and kind of pick apart, this is a simplistic example of how to do this. A lot of people learn like this. I learn from examples a lot easier than I do trying to just put things together from documentation. So this will help a lot of newcomers get started with it. So when you get a request from FreeSWITCH, this is an example of the data that FreeSWITCH sends over. For example, this is a directory lookup. Gives you host name, domain, key value pair, you get UUID, all the information, action, message count, key, it's ID user 1001, and the domain. And this changes depending. For example, this one right here is a directory lookup, but we're doing the action of SIP authentication. And this is what I was talking about on the SIP auth. You get all of the data available to you here. Call ID, the CNOTs, the nonce count, the response, the method. You get everything. So if you wanted to do an additional check or tie anything custom in, you can completely do it all here. And again, these are examples of what you get. And here is an example of a request. This is just a raw dump from Data Dumper in Perl to show you kind of what you get for dial plan lookup. And you see here, you get the caller profile, you get all of the variables that are available when the request is made. So you could actually condition on all of this and make decisions based on variables or information from the call and build a custom dial plan. For example, you could even look up this information and be like, this is an example. If you see this is SIP CLI. This is an attack that was happening to the system when I was coding this, and I'll have something else on this next week as well, or week after, where you use XML curl to combat some of these things. But you have the data here, so you could actually, in your XML curl, go, hey, that's a scammer or a fraudster, so I want to take the information I have available to me, and I want to block them. So I can send this off to another process, fire a message somewhere to send something out to your entire cluster to block that system-wide or control your firewall. That's just one of many little things you can do. So let's go back to the dial plan example. Now you kind of get an idea of what FreeSWITCH posts. And again, this is something that can happen, especially if you build. This is a simplistic dial plan that I put together. That just answer, playback, welcome to FreeSWITCH. And this is what it generates. So this is an example of the XML writer. Again, you wouldn't do this in production. You would build some kind of convenience wrapper so you don't mess this up, because it's so easy to forget a tag or put them in a completely different context of where they're supposed to be. The convenience functions that you would write around XML writer or whatever your particular language of choice is to help you not make those mistakes. Because I made a mistake yesterday when I was doing one of the configs. I had excluded one of the tags that was required for FreeSWITCH to find the data within the XML, and I was scratching my head, and I had to rubber ducky that one off of Ken yesterday just to cross-check me, because I was like, I'm missing something. I know I am, and that's why you would do convenience functions, to keep you from making those time-consuming mistakes. So right here, I'm adding applications, and it's building the XML. I could even come in here and application set to data equals foo equals bar. And that would render a dial plan with the application set foobar answer playback. Again, you could do this all programmatically. This is a static example. So I'm going to show you what that does on the console when we do this. So right here I have FreeSWITCH running, and over here I have Bria. And if you notice, I didn't have a condition here. It's a condition that matches everything, just for simplicity's sake. So anything that hits this dial plan will answer, playback, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So let me dial just anything with Bria. For example, if I dial ASDF and I just say audio call,
the future of telephony.
and it plays and hangs up. Do that again while we watch the console.
The future of telephony.
So and I'll scroll up here and show you information. Okay, you see right here? This is normal stuff you guys have seen when you're building dial plan. You see parsing public, ASDF. You see the action set equals foobar. That's something just coded in Perl there for as an example to show you. We got answer and then playback. This is the simplest example of doing this. Now you could also, so one thing, and that just come to mind is I've seen people build this particular condition tag with regular expressions in it and return large chunks of XML that FreeSWITCH doesn't even need to see. So FreeSWITCH will progress through the large XML document that the end user has decided to feed it. And that's a waste of time. You don't need to do that. What you need to do is give FreeSWITCH exactly what it needs to answer that exact request. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no reason to build a condition tag in this XML to make it do anything different, because it should just be exactly what FreeSWITCH needs to do for this request. You've decided programmatically what matched, what needs to be done. There's no need for regular expressions at all. So avoid that. That's just something I've seen in the community. Some of the mistakes that newcomers have made, because they have especially if you've transitioned from static XML to XML curl, you still have the mindset of how the static configs worked. This is kind of a different paradigm. You want to go into this and learn it and kind of do it the way it should be done. So let's go back over here to the next example. We have a directory example here. And this is a directory for user 1001 with password 1234. Now I'm going to show you the code I wrote for this. And again, this is XML Writer. All of this stuff. You see these params. I could go create another param here just by doing okay, so I could create another param here that says context, comma, this default, right? So now I'm setting the context for this particular directory lookup to add the param. Again, you would do this programmatically, and you can retrieve your user information, your data from a database. Again, this is, if you've used Fusion PBX, they do something very similar to this, but they do the Lua handler, which is all internal and doesn't do any external request. And that's great. This allows you to centralize your config a little bit more, so that you can have one config repo, one config system set up to answer all of these requests. And it just helps you deploy a large cluster of FreeSWITCHes. Because you could even answer the configurations, because you get the switch name. So you could name your switches, you know which one's making the request. You could answer completely different for switch A, switch B. You could even keep track of where things are. Like, for example, you have a cluster, a conference comes in, you could write down where that's at, or you could do that, again, you could do that also with a Camillio's instance setting in front of your cluster. But if you didn't want to, you could keep track of it in your XML curl backend and know that, hey, I get a request for that conference 1234. For the second person, I look up where it's at, and I return the dial plan to send that call to the exact place it needs to go where everybody else is. So you don't end up with multiple calls coming in for conference 1234 and getting put all over the place and everybody being in different conferences. One example. So we're using that. This is actually being used because the Bria is using this particular directory entry to actually authenticate. So our phone call wouldn't have happened without it. And now configuration. I did the simplest configuration. This is the one where I got tied up yesterday. It was easy to do. I forgot the section tag, and I one of those brain fart kind of moments. So this is an example of building an XML document for a configuration file. I've conditioned on the section is the configuration, which is in the request. It's looking for key value acl.conf, and you'll get one of these for every configuration that FreeSWITCH requests. So you can, again, like I said in the beginning, you can choose to answer or not found the request if you want FreeSWITCH to fall back. So this is the XML that this would create down here. If you look, all of this stuff is set up, section, network lists, blah, blah, blah. And there we go. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like on the console. So if I were to do a reload ACL, you'll see right here, this is the XML curl adding 123.3.2.1/32 deny. This was an HTTP request to XML curl.cgi. I evaluated all the data. Again, you could look up what you need from a database, and boom, there you go. Fill them all out. FreeSWITCH has it. Good to go. Now, I could come in here and add more. So, save it. And we could do reload ACL again. You see it added big. For this, and FreeSWITCH knows about 4.5.56.67.78/32. And that works with any configuration of FreeSWITCH. So Sophia, time zones, everything can be serviced up like this. So does anybody have any questions while I'm at this point? Any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question, Brian. What's the difference between the XML that's served up for XML curl and the actual static files that's on the file system?
There's no difference at all. The representations are the same. What you're doing in this particular case with XML curl is you're giving FreeSWITCH the exact data to answer that request and that request only. Like I was saying, you don't need to return the entire configuration. Just answer what FreeSWITCH is asking for at that moment. Nothing else.
Right. But I think what I'm getting at, and I'm trying to be leading the question here a little bit, is the XML representation of the config that you're returning is the exact same XML format that you would do the static files with, correct?
Right. There's nothing different about it. It's just a different mindset. Like I was saying, it's some people are like, oh, it's 3-dimensional. This is more like 4 dimensions on this. And Anthony has explained that multiple times, and it said that particular comparison before in the past. And it's one of those things that, I've used XML curl for a long time now. And this is the best way for you to take FreeSWITCH, forklift it on top of your existing infrastructure, your existing backend, your data, anything that you have, and you could just set FreeSWITCH right on top of it, build your handler external to FreeSWITCH, and you can integrate rapidly. And this gives you a lot of flexibility. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, so just so that I'm... Oh, go ahead.
That's right. What about, can we talk a little bit of, it's Michael, can we talk a little bit about caching and that type of stuff?
Yes, there are facilities in XML curl for you to give you can put extra tags in to make FreeSWITCH cache the results. So if you want to keep those results valid for 120 seconds, an hour, a day, whatever, you fill that out, and that's on the Confluence page. I didn't put that in here because that goes a little above, and that's one of those things that I don't want to add and trip people up. But it is possible. I would have you reference the Confluence page on that topic. If anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to email me, brian@freeswitch.org. I'll do my best to answer you, or you can jump on the live chat on We can help you there as well. One more thing.
One more question for you, Brian, and you may be about to do this. But is there any good way from the FreeSWITCH perspective to debug the
Yes,
XML?
that's exactly where I was headed next. You're on it today. So you've written your XML backend, you have everything going, and you've hit a problem. Like beating your head on the desk, what's going on? I need to debug this. So there are facilities in XML Pro for you to have what FreeSWITCH requests and what it receives from your backend to disk. So you could just look and see what FreeSWITCH is getting. You could make a mistake in variable expansion, tags like I did yesterday, and look at it, and it looks perfectly fine, but you're missing a complete set of tags that enclose the data, and FreeSWITCH just doesn't find what it's looking for. So what you would do is you would do XML curl debug on. Now what this will allow you to do is, I'm going to place this call again.
Future of telephony.
And I'm going to scroll back up and I'll show you what you'll see. All right, you see this little XML curl response line? XML curl response is in, and it gives you a file name. Write some in temp. Let's go see what that is. And there you go. That is the dial plan as FreeSWITCH received it. You know, no reason. This is perfect. It works great. But if there was a bug in it, you would be able to spot it. Because if you're transitioning from static configs to XML curl, this is more of what you're used to looking at versus programmatically building the XML. And it takes a little getting used to. It's not something that you'll become a master at overnight. Again, like I said, you would build convenience functions. You would build it up to where building dial plans, configurations, anything you think of, directory entries, all where you have most of the stuff done for you underneath, and then you just call a few things to make these objects come to life and render them back to FreeSWITCH. I've done something similar to this in the past. It works really well. It gives you awesome flexibility. I can't underscore that enough. I see the community when they do like the big complex big dial plans with these stacked and nested conditions, and it's just your head hurts when you try to look at these things. It gets complex, confusing to try to do certain things to a point. XML dial plan's great static, but when you surpass where you're stacking and nesting and anti-actioning, and it gets hard to follow. This is where you need to go. This will allow you to do all of those conditions, all of that logic, using your system, your business backend. All of it happens external to FreeSWITCH. This is just the best way to do it. Gives you great flexibility. So let me see if there's anything else I've got here. I think that's pretty much it on my topic list here. If you look on the Confluence page at the bottom, there are some examples that go beyond what I've shown you here. In addition, there are some PHP examples and libraries on that page, along with PHP examples. There's Perl examples, Python, C#, Ruby, C++ directory example, all available on the Confluence page that would help you get started. If you have questions, hop on the mailing list. It's at lists.freeswitch.org. Subscribe to FreeSWITCH-users. Post your question. Include information, FreeSWITCH revision that you're running, kind of a detail of what you're trying to do. Give us some information, and we'll try our best to help you in the open source. Any other questions? Again, I think we've covered this topic pretty good. let me.
Oh, and I'm sitting here muted. I was actually going to ask you one more question. And this comes up from time to time, and so I want to get you to answer this for posterity. But so this is just doing a simple web request out to a web server. What if I've I'm got some fairly complex CGIs here that can take let's just say for the sake of argument, a fair bit of CPU time. Is XML curl compatible with, say, like a reverse load balancing proxy, so I can have, say, 3 XML web servers, sitting behind, say, like Apache or Nginx or something to load balance, and then a stack of FreeSWITCH boxes out front?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that in the beginning. When I said you could reuse existing web technology, because you can get, this is knowledge that a lot of people have because they've used it for years to set up high available websites that load balance and are able to answer requests efficiently. This gives you the ability to do that to the config engine that you build to render XML back to FreeSWITCH. So you can spread that load out. You can make it redundant. You can rotate boxes in and out. All of that happens external to FreeSWITCH. So FreeSWITCH would not know the difference of who's answering the request. It would just do what you told it to do. This is I guess you could call it a puppet on a string at this point. Once you get here, you do everything pretty much outside of FreeSWITCH using the existing elements and Lego bricks that are available to you. That's what I call FreeSWITCH. It's a huge Lego set. We don't glue any of the pieces together.
No craggle.
Which is that's a good thing and a bad thing sometimes, because it sometimes can give you enough rope to hang yourself. But we try to help people when they make those mistakes as best we can. It's easy to implement things in a way that work great in the laboratory, especially in limited testing. Oh, this is great. Roll it into production. It may not scale like you thought. So there's ways you can do it. In addition, if you don't like how XML curl itself works, it's a module that uses the C bindings, and you can write a C module to create your own bindings to answer these requests as well. So you could load a module that deals with maybe building the ACL.conf and answering that request. So you could load a C module that binds to the configuration that looks for the request of XML curl, just like XML curl for ACL.conf. And you could build your document in C and hand that back, and FreeSWITCH would just work. It's just a binding. It's an interface in FreeSWITCH that you can extend if you don't like exactly what XML curl does.
Is there any other web technologies in FreeSWITCH that we can use that maybe give you more call granularity control via similar mechanism?
Yeah, we do have the outbound event socket. That's one way. That allows you to return a request that does an outbound connection to a socket on a server. Then again, another way to control the call in a very fine granular way, because you can do a lot of things with the call that you may not want to, because you could do things where you want to, every step of the way, based on the input that you receive on the call, make decisions and change direction. And in those cases, in FreeSWITCH, when you're doing the XML document in XML curl, you don't have like you say, playback, play and get digits. You don't know what the digits are. So you can't make a decision at that point in time when you build the XML to do a different path. So you could use the outbound event socket and say, have a completely external server answer that request, look at it, and make those dynamic decisions on the fly as the call progresses through the applications, and that gives you a lot more flexibility as well. So those two technologies together can really work together to give you something that completely sets outside of FreeSWITCH.
What about the advantages of this over like HTTP API or like the Lua handler?
HTTP API is more application centric. It's you build applications with it. And again, this is another topic I'm going to do a talk on. So I don't know when, but it's on my list of topics that I will be covering. But that's more application centric, whereas XML curl is configuration, directory, dial plan. So that's a difference there. It's a different target. Just like the outbound event socket is more of an application type interface where you build an app, not a dial plan. Because you could actually use outbound event socket and make all your calls go to a socket, and boom, you're done. You could also set your dial plan on your Sophia profile to an inline dial plan that just calls socket, and you're done. You don't even have to build any XML.
Actually, you can make the difference between HTTP API and the dial plan, as the dial plan is configuration, or at least the XML curl is configuration, while HTTP API is actually controlling what happens. So you actively do something. So that's the two. I just had the occasion to look into it because Anthony told me, and it's very, very nice, by the way.
Yeah, one thing about it is it gives you the ability to expose the power of FreeSWITCH in a granular way where you can decide what applications and things that the end user could run. So you could expose, I want playback, set, various other, conference, and then you could give the tools to an end user to build an application within your organization, knowing that they're not going to execute the system application and own the box. So it gives you the control over privileges of what you can and cannot do. That's a good option as well. So any other questions? Ken?
All right, guys.
Covered,
Brian?
good one. You got any more?
No, I was actually trying to hint at HTTP API there.
Yeah, again,
know.
like I said, I'm going to do one of those. I'm going to build some things and show people how to use that as well, because it's I guess you could say it's one of the best kept secrets of FreeSWITCH, and it doesn't get a lot of exposure. I would like to make that difference. I would like to get that taken care of and get people more involved in that, because I would love to have a repository of applications. The nice thing about it is you could even do like a microservice app with HTTP and sell access to certain things. There's just the possibilities are limitless, really.
Yeah, I think what you were getting at with ESL, outbound sockets, and with HTTP, there's a lot of overlap there. So with HTTP, though, I think it falls right more in line with what you were demonstrating here with curl, because the responses are very similar to what you would do from a just from a response standpoint. The syntax is obviously different, but it's just XML, so you can not necessarily return everything I'm going to do on this call, but okay, I want to play an IVR and get digits. Now, how do I react to that? I want to transfer. I want to send this call somewhere, and
Right.
and interact with that. And it's a very powerful thing. And like Brian says, he'll be doing that in the near future. So I don't think we've got a date on that yet, but watch for the announcement on that, because I know Kathleen will make that announcement ahead of time. Anything else you want to get in there today on this topic, Brian?
Nothing that if, like I said, if you have questions, hop on freeswitch.org. We're on IRC, pound FreeSWITCH on Freenode. You can join our mailing list at list.freeswitch.org to get assistance. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, at FreeSWITCH, at ClueCon, and do the same on Facebook, facebook.com/ClueCon, facebook.com/FreeSWITCH. Stay up to date. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get the updates. If you're on Facebook, this comes through Facebook Live as well, so keep an eye out for that. You'll get a notification. So that's pretty much it, Ken.
Yeah, cool. And hey, don't forget, guys, if you need help with your FreeSWITCH project, contact Brian via consulting@freeswitch.org, and he'll get one of the either him or one of the other guys that work with FreeSWITCH Solutions can help you on your project today. We'll be back here next week at noon U.S. Central with Matthew from Matrix, and they'll be showing off new release in the Matrix product, which is end-to-end encryption. If you guys aren't familiar with Matrix, it is a federated IM communications platform. It does IRC, instant messaging, even hooks up the FreeSWITCH for video and voice teleconferencing. So you guys don't want to miss that. Matthew's a cool dude, and they've got a really cool project going on there. So you guys be back here next week, and we'll see you then. Thank you, and you guys have a good week.
You've been watching ClueCon Weekly. Tune in every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, or visit us online. Please follow the FreeSWITCH team on Twitter and Facebook by visiting our site at freeswitch.org.